Joe Biden made major climate moves on day one in office, and we have activists to thank for that. They've been hard at work for years to make climate an issue that a president must campaign on and actually has to follow through on in order to win. Today, I'm talking with a very special guest, Josh Fox, about the activism that led us here and the activism we see that will see us through this climate crisis. Josh, welcome to the program.
So great to be back. I love your show.
Well, obviously everyone knows Josh Fox, Oscar nominated Emmy-winning writer and director of Gasland Parts 1 and 2. Josh has a new film coming out. I'm really looking. It's coming out Friday. The Truth Has Changed. Yes. Yeah,
The Truth Has Changed. It's a long time in the making. It's an interesting thing. It's a solo performance that I've been working on. As you know, I don't know if you know this or how many people know this, but my background is in the theater. I've run a theater company for my entire life. And so this was a commission originally by HBO, as Sheila Nevins, the guru at HBO that brought on Gasland and all the things, who was then fired by AT&T in the corporate takeover of that station, which is a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And she commissioned me to do a one-man show back in 2016, and I started working on it. Or maybe it was 2017. Anyway, it has to do with smear and misinformation and how the same forces that for years smeared my whole reputation and came after me and said everything about me, from I was a terrorist, I was an arsonist, I was a communist, I was a liar, I was all the things, the oil industry, basically, Steve Bannon, those guys then took over the United States government and were advised for Donald Trump. And that whole through line about misinformation in Facebook and in the media, which has now permanently divorced a huge segment of the United States population from reality and has resulted in so much of the violence that we've seen, and how it has direct ties to white supremacy and how the oil industry and white supremacists and colonialism work together. That's what the show is about. So it's called The Truth Has Changed. And so we did it last year in New York, and it's toured to 45 cities all across the United States. I've been doing this avant-garde solo theater performance, like in tiny little towns all across Pennsylvania and Arizona, and it's been really fun to do. But this is a commission from the Walker Arts Center in Minneapolis, who asked me to revise the piece. They saw it last year in New York. So I created a sort of film out of it, which is a compilation of some stuff that I've just recently shot and past performances, plus sort of a film version of it. And it's all compiled, and it premieres on Friday night at the Walker Arts Center, and that you can see online. And tickets are pay what you can, so you can pay like $1, which is fine with me, or whatever you like. And it's a performance of almost about 2 hours, and then there's a Q&A with a local group called Climate Generation. And so that should be a great evening. And there's information about it at my Instagram or at my Twitter, which is at Josh Fox Film.
Awesome.
Walker Arts Center. Thanks for mentioning that. I didn't know we were going to talk about it, but it's all about
it's important
between white supremacy and climate change, and how we have to stop this incredible siege on our reality and on our government.
Absolutely. No problem. Biden came out of the box hot with executive orders. What do you make of, first of all, he rescinded the Keystone Pipeline permit. That seems good.
Huge. I mean, look, Keystone Pipeline was a pipeline that I personally was arrested among 1,100 colleagues of mine in Washington, D.C. in 2011. So it's a 10-year fight. So don't think it's something that just happened with the stroke of a pen. This was 10 years of activism, specifically a coalition between environmental activists and indigenous activists that fought this pipeline across the heartland of America. They call it the heartland, Nebraska. I personally think Brooklyn is also the heartland.
Thank you.
But, the heartland, quote unquote. And there were farmers in Nebraska who were traditionally conservative people who fought this pipeline. Jane Klebb at Bold, Nebraska, and that incredible organization, they built a solar barn in the pathway of the Keystone XL. There was a lot of incredibly creative, ingenious, and determined activism. And the truth of the matter is, when we organize, we win. That's how these battles are fought. That's how these battles are won. When we organize, when we do things that put our bodies on the line. Again, it was the largest civil disobedience against the oil industry in history up until that point, right? Bill McKibben, Naomi Klein, Dallas Goldtooth, so many incredible people came together to say, we're coming to Washington, D.C. And this was in, I think, the fall of, or the late summer fall of 2011. And every day, a different group of people was arrested in front of the White House, blockading the front of the White House there. It was a very simple arrest. It wasn't a violent or dangerous situation, much like what Jane Fonda did with this Fridays for Fire Drill Fridays. And it was extraordinary to take part in. And you can see the photos of people sitting there, hundreds at a time, being taken away. And that got the message. And Obama reacted. And he sent the pipeline back for an environmental review. And it has been this zombie pipeline. You think you kill it, and then a leg starts to move across Texas, you know, and like, but it seems to be the final thing. Now, this can't be, this has to be celebrated, because it is the voice of the people and the voice of the action movements, right? These were movements that made this happen, not the big greens. This wasn't the Sierra Club, right? Who every month or so will send you a new backpack, you know, or a t-shirt.
And I'm like, I don't need the backpack. I don't do environmentalists really need the backpack.
I don't want to take real action. This was the result of real grassroots people doing this. And so now the message has to be to Joe Biden, okay, you must cancel the Dakota Access Pipeline. You must cancel the Line 3 in Minnesota. And where this comes from is back in 2016, when I was on the platform committee to help write the Democratic platform as a compromise between the Sanders campaign and the Hillary Clinton campaign, right? We came up with certain principles, and these were pushed by great environmental leaders like Bill McKibben, like Russell Green, who were on the platform committee. And we were devising strategies for how do we create positions that were the ones that we wanted, that we knew we needed to get at the same time as you had a Clinton administration that also paid lip service to the oil industry, was pro-fracking, much the same situation that we have with Joe Biden, right? Mm-hmm. So we came up with a principle that said, if you're going to create a federal energy project, it has to withstand what we call the Keystone XL test, meaning, is it good for the environment or bad? Is it good for the climate or bad for the climate? Meaning, is there a net benefit? So if you're going to build a wind farm, go for it. But if you're going to build a dirty oil sands pipeline, that can't exist. That's not going to meet our federal standard, meaning the Keystone XL standard. And that was written into the Democratic platform back in 2016. It's one of the reasons why we, even in the Sanders camp, were fighting for Hillary Clinton to become the president, because we had so much skin in the game because of that platform. Now we're seeing that movement, that moment of fight, of compromise and of real strength come to fruition in some of the things that the Biden administration is doing. They're not doing anywhere near close to enough, in my opinion, but it's a really, really good start.
I think, you recently tweeted about the importance of banning fracking. He bans the pipeline, so Canada has to keep that oil in the ground, but he's not banning fracking. Your thoughts about that?
Let me just tell you, as the person who made Gasland, which was one of the films that got the fracking awareness all around the world, right? It's like a punch in the stomach every time he says this. And it's not just that I care about it from a personal standpoint. It is a punch in the stomach of the science. The science says that fracking and fracked gas is now the #1 rising source of new climate emissions in the world. Right? If you want to see why we've gone on this huge acceleration of warming over the last decade or so, the direct culprit is the methane that's coming from those fracking wells. We have a methane spike in the atmosphere. NASA has confirmed it. 70% of that methane spike, which is causing all of this recent complete disruption. Why are we having the climate impacts that we thought we would have 20 years from now? Well, methane, which is natural gas. We don't like to call it natural gas. We call it fracked gas because it's not natural.
There's nothing natural about it.
No, it's fracked gas. That fracked gas in the atmosphere is 100 times more potent than carbon dioxide is over the 20-year time frame, right? So that means it's warming, it's accelerating warming very, very rapidly. And that's coming from fracking. We have charted this, and we know that is where this largest new increase in greenhouse gas emissions is coming from. And to say that we're going to act on climate without banning fracking, without stopping this, is on the border being a climate denialist. And, the new climate movement, which I love, I absolutely love the Sunrise Movement. I love, what we're seeing from this new level of climate movement. We, as the fracking movement, we have to get together because we cannot make compromises within this government structure to say, all right, we're going to ban Keystone, we're going to do this. We can't get in there as activists or as lobbyists at that time, basically, and say we're going to fight for a Green New Deal without banning fracking. We cannot.
I have a question though. I think that for his election purposes, he was not going to say we're not banning fracking. I mean, the guy was running like as a middle of the road guy.
Yeah, but he said it yesterday. I mean, I could understand. Look.
Yeah, well, he's not going to go from we're not banning fracking to on my first day we're banning fracking. But he did talk. I don't think he's going to ban it, but he did talk a lot about transitioning from, to green energy. So I don't know. I know what we need is banning fracking, but I don't know if it's actually politically feasible to say I'm banning it.
Well, let me just say this. In 2011, Vice President Joe Biden would probably have come out and said, I'm not going to ban the Keystone Pipeline. I have this to say to Joe Biden, you are going to ban fracking. You just don't know it yet. We're just getting started. We're just getting started. And the truth of the matter is, Biden's climate plan de-escalates or disincentivized a lot of the frack gas infrastructure, right? So there is, in a way, he's writing in a real slope to get rid of fracking. And when we talk about banning fracking, let's be clear about this. We're talking about a 5-year timescale, right? We're talking about it will take a long time to get America off of that. There is a transition that needs to happen. So to a degree, what Joe Biden is saying is whatever, it's political speak. Yeah. However,
he's saying I won't ban fracking, but I'll make it very uncomfortable for you to frack.
Well, that's not yes and no. We have to see, right? I mean, what they're talking about is stopping all oil drilling and fracking on federal lands, which they said they would do, right? Mm-hmm. Federal lands is about 10% of fracking. Now, look, I love federal lands. My girlfriend's a park ranger. We have
oh my God, that's awesome.
And so much of what we do in the fracking movement is look at the BLM, not Black Lives Matter, the other BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, which is our land. No, it's it's funny that they're both called BLM. Funny. But the Bureau of Land Management, that's our public trust. That's our public land. And the government auctions that public land off at pennies on the acre.
Unbelievable.
Rapacious oil companies.
And then if somebody shows up who's not an oil company and actually buys it, they get sent to jail.
Well, that's true. That's the story of my very good friend, Tim DeChristopher, which I documented in my film, How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change. By the way, most of my films you can watch right now at joshfoxfilm.com, my website, joshfoxfilm.com, for free. We put up the majority of my movies for free because of the coronavirus crisis.
Thank you.
Donation you can, but How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change, which is on HBO and at Sundance, for free. Gasland up there for free. Short film on gas workers called Gas Work up there for free. Awake, A Dream from Standing Rock, the film we made about Standing Rock, the collaboration film between myself and Indigenous filmmakers, up there for free. So, go check them out. But Tim DeChristopher, you're right. This incredible man who, incredible activist, personal good friend of mine. Like we went, he went to the one of these auctions where they auction off the oil and gas leases. And he said, he was there to sort of disrupt the auction. He didn't know how he was going to do that. But when he arrived, they took him for a bidder, and they said, "Will you be bidding today, sir?" And then
he said, "Good, I think I will." Yeah,
he said, "I think I will." And then he systematically drove up the prices for all these, and then he won every parcel for the rest. He won like 17 parcels. So the Obama administration then called that auction illegal. So they canceled the auction, but they still prosecuted him. And he ended up going to jail for 2 years. And his story is in another great documentary called Bidder 70. Bidder, like to bid in an auction, and 70, the number 7. So check out Bidder 70 and also check out How to Let Go of the World, because he's amazing in that film too. But yes, they will put you in jail if you're not an oil company who is going to destroy the place. So
just
fracking on federal land is a huge and amazing thing. It has to happen. Has to happen.
when it comes to the pandemic, we've seen a drop in the use of oil. We've seen countries, whose economies depend on oil, like Saudi Arabia, in a panic because the demand is down so much. Can we have a conversation? I keep having this conversation with journalists about, do we have to go back to normal? I mean, Greta Thunberg is like, well, you shouldn't fly anyway, and everyone has this major push to go back to normal. I'm not sure how I feel about that, and I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I host a program my own self called Staying Home with Josh Fox. It's currently on TYT.
Yes.
And I ask, are so many of our guests are talking about the Green New Deal. It's called Your Revolutionary Guide to the Green New Deal. So every day on the program, if it's appropriate, I ask people, what are the things that you want to keep from coronavirus? Because there are lessons that look, this is the first time in my life, in your life, that we've seen the economy shut down. And it was shut down in April, it was shut down in May, and we saw the skies clear. We saw emissions go plummeting down, right? We dropped emissions by 20%. There are lessons to be learned from that moment. We need our cities free of cars, or at least 50% of the streets free of cars, like we saw in New York. We want to have a city that's not going, where bicyclists are not getting mowed down in the streets every day, right? Where we can breathe the air. We saw nature rebound in ways that we really need to maintain, right? Not only that, but I think this is psychic and spiritual as well, right? Because we know money doesn't buy us happiness. The economy that's constantly polluting the atmosphere, that's grinding nature into dust, that's creating more and more things that are made out of plastic, that doesn't bring us happiness. And we have to examine from this moment of being stuck inside what actually does bring us happiness. It's our friends. It's our ability to get together. It's our health. Those are the things that matter the most. And if we continue to create this economy based on extraction, based on incarceration, based on racism and white supremacy, based on capitalism and competition, then guess what's going to happen? We will lose those things that really make us happy in the pursuit of the things that don't. The things that really make us happy are, not having, well, okay, let's just say this. In the climate change future, if we don't radically scale back, which means reduction of fossil fuels by at least what we did this year because of coronavirus, right? Every year, right? We are going to probably cut emissions by about 7 or 8% altogether for the year of coronavirus. That has to happen every single year, 7%, if we're going to halt climate change at below 2 degrees. But the basic future is this pandemic will be the first. And there will be 5 more of them happening at the same time as extreme, 5 or 10, who knows, like extreme weather events, sea level rise, drought and fire and flood at the same time as, new pandemics. And what happens if a lot of us and a lot of people in the world found a sort of back to nature moment because of coronavirus. They said, you know what, I'm leaving the city, I'm going back to nature, I'm going to find, and so many people, New York City, I think lost, I don't know, a couple hundred thousand, $750,000 people.
I love I'm out.
Yeah, well, but
Yeah.
And so people are rediscovering nature at this moment, right? But guess what? If the next pandemic is mosquito borne, you're not going to run to nature. You're going to find the smallest, the dankest cell in the most industrial, bleakest city in the world. We can't do this and pretend that nature is not going to strike back. And there is already a mosquito-borne encephalitis that can kill 70% of the people. Who knows what nature has in store for us if we continue to boil the oceans, if we continue to rise the temperature. We have to take this as a warning. So not only do we have to do the things that will make us happier, which is to make sure that working from home, not having cars in the streets, scaling back industrial pollution, all those things, we have to do that if we want to actually maintain our survival, because this is scary. We have to see this as the warning that it is.
I was talking to Marianne Williamson on the program, and we had a nice conversation about how Biden's advanced age and the fact that he already has money and he already has his legacy. He's like done after this, right? Where are you going to go after this? So that it's possible, and that we should push him to, be like the mic drop president and just be like, I'm doing the whole thing. I'm going to ban the fracking. I'm done, and that is a possibility here that he might.
A little of that in Jerry Brown in California, but it was sort of disappointing, right? Because he also didn't ban fracking. He also didn't, he did a lot of those mic drop things, but for some reason they always keep this little bit of absurdity. But let's just be honest, when we talk about banning fracking, we're talking about scaling back, but we're also talking about a principle. Okay, so I was on Twitter the other day, and I got an ad from the American Petroleum Institute, right, API. And
they're clearly not targeting their.
The ad was like, you can't ban our jobs on federal lands. And I wrote back to them. I said, look, killing the planet is not a good job. You guys could retrain these people to create wind farms and solar farms, but you're not doing it. Instead, you would rather lie to people. And they actually wrote me back, API, on Twitter. And they clapped back. I mean, they were like, this isn't about you, Josh. This is about our schools. We fund the schools. If you stop oil drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, all the schools in the region will close.
You mean the schools where the kids are going to die from asthma because of the fracking that you're banning? I mean, they're just ridiculous.
They're pointing out how coercive they are by funding those schools and how they've bankrupted the public trust and made schools dependent on them, right? Which is policies that they created, right? But let me just say this. Yeah, I said to them, I said, look, well, you're training kids for a future that you're going to destroy. If you don't stop doing what you're doing, there's no point in educating these children because they won't have a future. And they were like, what? And I was like, and by the way,
you're like, have you read anything? Have you considered? Here's my free movies. They're on joshfox.com.
I also said, look, there are these little things called school strikes happening. I mean, maybe you've been looking. I mean, if not, you can. And I refer them to Greta Thunberg. But the point is that this is what was interesting about this was that she was saying you can't stop it all tomorrow, meaning, oh, we're going down. We're going down. So I want to write to her next and be like, so what's your timetable for completely ending your entire operation? Because that's where we're at right now. We need to see this oil industry done. And we don't need the oil industry anymore. They know that. They know we don't need them anymore. They know we have alternatives.
And I don't understand why people who, run oil industries and whatever, they're intelligent, they're market savvy. Isn't it time they jump ship? Isn't it time that they see the writing on the wall?
So I think some of them are. I mean, definitely. I mean, you saw, I think it was one of the largest investment firms in the world say, we're no longer going to invest in fossil fuels. Trump tried to get Alaska, that whole Alaskan wildlife refuge that has been on the chopping block for our entire lives. Ronald Reagan wanted to open that place up, right? And Donald Trump did it. He was like, okay, everybody, season, screw the elks, screw the polar bears, forget the indigenous people in Alaska, forget the trees, forget all this wildlife stuff. Go ahead, drill like crazy. And no oil companies could find a financier to do it.
Yeah, I think that didn't the towns kind of buy it up and they're like, we're just going to keep y'all out. We don't want.
I don't know all the specifics. I wish I did, but I do know that it was almost impossible for them to find a bank. Because look, you can't just an oil industry is not going to be like, okay, here's a spare rig, send it over there. No, they want to get this stuff financed, right? So because if it fails, what they'll do is they'll just send all the losses to their investors. This is something the oil industry also does a lot. When the oil industry fails, they never fail for themselves. They just screw over their investors and they say, oh, sorry, whoops, you didn't find oil in the place that you thought you might find oil. And you invested in it, so you're just done. We're going to finance your debt, though, and we're going to charge you less. But basically, that's their game. They're just scam artists. But they could not find a bank to finance it, so it's not happening.
So talk about I remember having you on the program before Biden's election, before the election, and we talked about how Biden is actually pushable. Talk about the types of activist movement that we need at this moment in time.
Well, look, when it comes to changing the entire culture, we need everything. We need the whole gamut of things, right? If you look at the civil rights movement, which I think is the template for every social movement in America, what did they do? They did everything. They had incredible leadership. They did incredible actions. They had civil disobedience actions. They had boycotts. They did the freedom rides. They went into dangerous territory. They got themselves arrested. They got themselves they put themselves in the line of fire. They also created an enormous cultural impact, right? Music, songs, plays, books, so that's what we need to create in order to take the planet back. And we're doing that. We're seeing that kind of cultural impact of this movement. We're seeing amazing leadership of people like Greta Thunberg, you know what I mean? And of the youth. There are incredible youth leaders happening right now. And the leadership of AOC, the leadership of the Sunrise Movement. It has been extraordinary. So we're pushing Biden. And I have personal experience with this because back in 2011, the other major campaign that we were running was to stop fracking in the Delaware River Basin. And in that moment, it was a crazy time because we were looking at the New York City watershed and the Delaware River, which is the watershed for 16 million people, right? It's also my home.
What's a little poison for 16 million people?
Yeah, they wanted to put 25,000 gas wells there. And there's a 5-member body that controls that river basin. The governors of New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, and a representative from the federal government, right? So at the time, that's a 5-member body. You need 3 votes to win. And 3 votes for the oil industry would mean frack the whole place, destroy it completely. So we were at that verge because New York said no. New Jersey, which was Chris Christie, and PA, which was Tom Corbett, had said yes. So we needed votes from Delaware and the federal government. So Bill McKibben and I decided to appeal to Joe Biden because Joe Biden's from Delaware. He can call the governor, and he was the vice president. And nobody ever asked the vice president for anything, right? So let's make Kamala Harris a target for some of this because we can go for that because she was on our side. She was a ban fracking candidate, right? So we appealed to Joe Biden in the 11th hour. We got 10,000 phone calls into his office. And, I have it on good information that he actually made the call. He called the governor of Delaware, and the vote was canceled. So the river basin, Delaware River Basin, which is one of the most incredible places, a national treasure. 5% of Americans get water from that basin, has been saved because we had a direct campaign at Joe Biden. And I think we can do that again. We have to draw on his moral sensibility. He had a very strong environmental record. So it's not time to play footsie. We can say thank you, but we also have to go out there and we have to do the things like the massive civil disobedience actions at the White House. We have to be peaceful, but we absolutely have to put the pressure on. We can't just say, oh, great, everything's fine, let's go back to brunch. That is not what we can do right now. Every single time that man says, I am not going to ban fracking, you say, oh, yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are. But it's not really going to be you, it's going to be us. Because that's our responsibility, right? This is the thing that always bothered me about this idea of don't vote for the Democrats, vote for a third party. I'm not for that. That shows to me that we don't have faith in ourselves, right? When the Democrats are in office, we go on offense, right? When Trump is in office or Reagan or Bush, we're constantly playing defense. They're scrambling our brains. They're sticking a drill into your cerebral cortex and just turning it on with things like, the anti-Muslim campaigns or the Iraq war or things that are just completely destructive of everything that we value on human life. And you have to go fight those things. Now that we have a Democrat, it's our agenda. Our agenda is we're going to ban fracking. Our agenda is we're going to stop Dakota Access Pipeline. We're going to stop Line 3, and we're going to put the oil industry to bed. This is it. This is the end. We are going after an end game at this point. We have to transit, and that end game is called the Green New Deal. We have the plan. When FDR got into office, there was no such thing as the New Deal. They made it up, right? They had to figure it out during the crisis. We're in the crisis, and we have the plan. The plan is called the Green New Deal. It's an incredible plan. It's an ethos. It's a structural, it's an energy change, but it's also a change in the way that we do everything. And that's why I'm talking about this spiritual change that we have to learn from the coronavirus. We have to figure out what makes us happy. We have to figure out that it's not this economy that really isn't serving us. It only serves the billionaires. So the Green New Deal is a restructuring of so many things. So I encourage people to read the many different versions of it. The Bernie Sanders version of it, I love the best, or to watch my program called Your Revolutionary Guide to the Green New Deal, which is done every day.
Wait, it's Your Revolutionary Guide to a Green New Deal, and you're on the TYT network, right? The Young Turks?
PYT. Yes.
Excellent. We're speaking with Josh Fox, Oscar-nominated, Emmy-winning writer, director of Gasland Parts 1 and 2. New film coming out on Friday, which is tomorrow. The Truth Has Changed. You can find that. Go to Josh Fox's website, which is joshfoxfilm.com. Right, Josh? Did I get that right?
That's my website. I think the information about the tickets for this is at the Walker Arts Center, or also I have it up on my Instagram and I have it up on my Twitter, which is at Josh Fox Film.
Excellent. At Josh Fox Film. Thank you so much for being here. And thanks for all the work that you're doing to, save the planet and make sure my kid has a hopeful future. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Juliana. It's I appreciate it. I love your program. So thanks for having me.
You're watching Act TV. I'm Julianna Forlano. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button and all that stuff. And also, I do suggest going and checking out Josh's program. It's like you just kind of can't get enough talk about the Green New Deal. And Josh is a great person to lead that kind of discussion. So thanks for watching. See you next time.